My name is Eleanor Grant. I'm 62 years old, a retired English teacher, and a widow for the last 7 years. My house is small, quiet, and filled with memories, most of them shaped by the love I poured into raising my only child, Michael. A few months ago, I gave Michael and his wife, Sofia, something most people would call unimaginable, a fully paid home. No mortgage, no loans, no conditions. I spent nearly all my life savings on it and told myself it was an act of love. I picked out the paint colors, assembled furniture in my garage, and even sewed curtains by hand. It wasn't just a house. It was a piece of me. So when my phone buzzed that morning, I assumed it was one of his usual short updates. Instead, the words on the screen made my hands tremble in a way I hadn't felt since I buried my husband. You won't be joining us on the family cruise. Sofia prefers to keep it just family. Just family. As though I was no longer part of it. I stared at the message, the smell of untouched coffee filling the kitchen. My fingers felt stiff and cold as I typed a single word back, okay. One word that held everything, shock, hurt, and a heavy understanding that something had shifted long before this moment. I remembered the little boy, who used to sit at my kitchen table with scraped knees, asking impossible questions about the stars. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man, who had quietly drawn a line I was suddenly not allowed to cross. The walls around me felt unfamiliar, like a museum of past choices. Family photos I had paid to take, vacations I had funded, trips I had insisted they enjoy. Every memory hung on those walls like receipts wrapped in smiles. I tried to swallow the truth, but it sat heavy in my chest. I had given too much, too quietly, for too long. And somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing me as a person. I had become the fixer, the helper, the wallet. And now that the money had run out, so had their affection. But something in me cracked that morning. Not in a broken way, no. In a way that finally made room for strength. The next morning, the silence in my house felt heavier than usual. Not peaceful, no. It pressed against my ribs, reminding me that something was deeply wrong. I tried distracting myself with small chores, wiping an already clean counter, straightening a picture frame for the third time, but nothing eased the tightness in my chest. Finally, I did what I had always done when life felt too heavy to bear alone. I called Linda, my oldest friend. She didn't ask questions, she simply said she was coming over. Within an hour, she stepped into my kitchen, her expression softening as soon as she saw my face. "Tell me," she said gently. I didn't have the strength to speak, so I simply slid my phone across the table. She picked it up, her brow tightening as she read the message Michael had sent. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "Eleanor, they've been planning this." I shook my head slowly, my voice breaking. Maybe it's just Sofia. Maybe she's the one pushing him. Michael isn't like this. Linda reached across the table and held my hand with the kind of honesty that only decades of friendship can give. "You raised a good boy," she said softly. "But you also raised a boy who never had to struggle. And that made him easy to influence. Sofia knows exactly how to use that." Her words hit something deep inside me, a place I'd been avoiding. I looked down at my hands, hands that had painted their house, cooked their meals, paid their bills. "You made yourself small," Linda continued gently. "And now they are treating you like you belong small." It hurt. God, it hurt. But she wasn't wrong. I had taught myself to be useful rather than seen, helpful rather than valued. I had mistaken gratitude for affection and silence for peace. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling as Linda's words echoed in my mind. "They've been planning this." Something inside me began to shift, not anger, not bitterness, but clarity. A quiet, fierce clarity. At 2:17 a.m., I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. The blue glow of my laptop lit the room as I sat down and opened my online accounts. For years, Sofia had insisted on helping me manage them. "It's easier," she always said with a sugary smile. "You shouldn't worry about these things." But that night, I saw everything with a different kind of awareness. And what I found wasn't just concerning. It was devastating. At first, everything in my online accounts looked normal. My checking, savings, and retirement funds were all there, numbers that appeared untouched. If I hadn't looked carefully, I might have closed the laptop and convinced myself I was imagining things. But danger rarely announces itself loudly. It hides in the ordinary. So I looked deeper. Slowly, a pattern began to take shape, small transfers, spaced out over months, labeled with innocent descriptions: property maintenance, home repair, emergency fund. None of the amounts were large enough to trigger alarms. But they were frequent enough to drain my savings without being noticed. Only, I hadn't approved any repairs. I hadn't authorized any automatic transfers. I never signed up for any emergency fund. My heart sank as I clicked through the details. The destination accounts weren't mine. They were Sofia's. Further down the page, I noticed something else: she had quietly added herself as a secondary user on my financial dashboard. A smooth, silent decision that allowed her access to every corner of my money. This wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't miscommunication. It was theft, polished, gentle, and intentional. I sat back slowly, feeling the chill run down my spine. My breaths came slow and steady, not with panic, but with a cold awareness settling in my chest. They weren't planning to hurt me someday. They were already doing it. And they believed I would never notice. I closed the laptop and sat in the glow of the kitchen light, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from something sharper. Determination. Betrayal has a way of clearing the fog from a person's eyes. When morning came, I knew what I had to do. No more silence. No more excuses. No more pretending. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Coleman, my attorney. He had handled everything for me over the years: my will, retirement plans, the legal documents I signed when I transferred the house to Michael and Sofia. He answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Grant," he said warmly, "good to hear from you. Is everything all right?" "No," I replied, my voice steady. "And that's why I need to see you today." He cleared his schedule immediately. 3 hours later, I sat across from him in his office, hands folded neatly in my lap. "I want to reverse the house transfer," I said. "And I want every account locked down. Cancel all powers of attorney. Every single one." His brows lifted slightly, not in surprise, but in understanding. This wasn't a small decision. This was war. Mr. Coleman didn't interrupt me. He simply leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from professional calm to quiet concern as he processed my request. "This could cause significant tension," he said gently. "They already caused tension," I replied, my voice steady. "I was just too blind to see it." He nodded once, then began pulling files from a drawer: my old documents, the deed transfer, my financial authorizations. "If you suspect financial exploitation," he said, "we'll need more than just a few irregular transfers. We'll need evidence. Clear records." Without a word, I slid a printed spreadsheet across the desk, every questionable transaction I had found between my accounts and Sofia's. Mr. Coleman studied it for a long moment. "Would you be open," he asked cautiously, "to hiring a private investigator? Someone who can trace the full scope of this?" There was no hesitation in me anymore. "Yes," I said firmly. "Hire whoever you trust." "Very well," he replied. His tone shifted from sympathetic to strategic. We'll begin the reversal process immediately. The investigator will contact you soon. And Eleanor, this won't be quick, but it will be thorough. As I walked out of his office, something unfamiliar settled inside me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was control, steady, quiet control. The kind I hadn't felt in years. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through my kitchen window as I sat with a cup of tea. For the first time in a long while, my hands didn't shake. I felt grounded, present. But the calm didn't last long. The following morning, I found a plain white envelope slipped under my front door. My stomach tightened as soon as I saw the handwriting, Sofia's looping cursive on a yellow sticky note atop the papers. Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. It'll make everything easier while we are away. I hadn't heard the door open. They were likely already gone, off on their luxury cruise, cocktails in hand, smiling for photographs. And here I was, staring at an envelope that suddenly felt radioactive. I opened it carefully. Inside were professionally typed documents. The kind that looked harmless at first glance, routine estate updates, authorization forms, simplified paperwork meant to help me. But buried deep in the jargon was a clause I almost missed. An irrevocable power of attorney, granting Sofia total control over my finances, my property, my medical decisions, and the legal right to admit me into a care facility, without my consent, my breath caught in my throat. They weren't just planning for my future. They were planning to take everything now. And they expected me to sign it. But instead of fear, a cold calm settled over me. Because what they didn't know was that I had just found the strongest piece of evidence yet. And I intended to use it. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment, the envelope still open on the counter, the papers neatly stacked inside as if they were harmless. But the truth weighed on me like stone. If I had signed those documents, if I had trusted them the way I always had, Sofia would have held complete authority over my life. She could have sold my home. She could have drained every account I had left. She could have placed me in a care facility and smiled sweetly while doing it. All with my legal consent. I exhaled slowly, letting my hand fall to the countertop. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I had already done all the breaking I would ever do. Instead, I whispered into the quiet kitchen, speaking to the version of myself who existed only weeks ago, naive, hopeful, desperate to be included. You almost signed this, I murmured. Almost. But not today. By noon, I was back in Mr. Coleman's office. There was no polite greeting this time, no attempt at small talk. He saw the envelope in my hands and immediately straightened in his chair. They left this for me, I said calmly. While they were boarding their cruise. His jaw tightened as he carefully examined the documents. He read slowly, stopping at the fine print. When he reached the clause granting Sofia permanent authority, he let out a sharp exhale. This isn't just irresponsible, he said. It's predatory. I nodded. That's what I thought. If you had signed this, he continued, they could have seized every one of your assets before the week was over. I know, I said quietly. He looked up at me then, really looked at me, not as a vulnerable client, but as someone who had finally decided to fight. We'll move faster, he said. The reversal on the house is already filed. We are freezing all accounts to prevent unauthorized access. And after seeing this, he tapped the envelope, I'll have the investigator pursue a full audit. Every transfer. Every signature. Every login. I felt no fear. Only clarity. There's one more thing, he added. We are drafting a protective clause. If they try any form of legal coercion or retaliation, we'll have a complete timeline ready to present in court. For the first time in years, my shoulders loosened. My breath felt full, steady. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building a wall, a boundary so solid they would never push through it again. When I returned home later that afternoon, the house looked the same, but I wasn't the same. The woman who once tried to buy love had finally learned to defend herself. And they would never see me coming. 4 days passed before their cruise ship finally returned to port. 4 days of peace. 4 days of reclaiming myself piece by piece. By the time their vacation ended, everything was already in motion. The house transfer reversal was approved. My accounts were secured and frozen from outside access. The investigator had already uncovered additional suspicious transactions linked to Sofia's name. And the new sale of the property, my property, had begun. They had no idea. When their ship docked, I was already there. I parked a block away from the house and stood quietly across the street, watching them pull up, sunburned and relaxed, their luggage piled high in the trunk. They looked like a couple returning from paradise, unaware that the ground beneath their feet had shifted. Sofia stepped out first, barking orders about scheduling mortgage finalizations and upcoming renovations. Her voice was sharp and impatient, as though the world owed her speed. Michael followed, dragging his suitcase behind him, scrolling through his phone like always, detached, absent, unaware. Then they saw it. 2 unfamiliar cars in the driveway. A moving van. A young couple talking to a real estate agent near the front porch. Boxes being carried inside. Confusion spread across Michael's face like a slow-moving shadow. What is this?" he whispered. Sofia's eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. "Who are these people? Why are they in our house?" I stepped forward, calm and steady. "It's not your house," I said matter-of-factly. "Not anymore." Michael blinked at me, the panic rising quickly. "Mom, what's going on?" Sofia moved closer, her tone rising. "You can't do this. We are refinancing. We have plans." I reached into my bag and handed Michael a folder. "These," I said, "are the only plans that matter." He opened it slowly. House reversal documents. Sale agreements. Financial audit reports. Copies of every unauthorized transaction. Sofia snatched the folder, flipping through the pages with a growing desperation. Her face drained of color. "This won't hold up," she snapped. "We were helping you. You'll regret this." I met her gaze without blinking. "You mean draining my accounts while smiling to my face? Adding yourself to my finances without permission? Using my home as collateral while I sat in the dark?" Michael swallowed hard. "We didn't mean." I raised a hand to silence him. "No," I said coldly. "You didn't mean to get caught." The silence that followed was deeper than shouting. It was the sound of truth settling like dust around them. For a moment, nobody moved. The street seemed to hold its breath, the new buyers whispering, the agent pretending not to stare, Michael and Sofia standing frozen like statues carved out of shock and guilt. Then Michael stepped forward, voice unsteady. "Mom, you can't just sell the house. We had a plan, our future, our future." I repeated quietly. "Michael, I spent a lifetime building a home for you. Not so it could become a playground for someone who sees me as an easy target." His eyes wavered. For the first time, he looked small, like the boy he used to be. But the man he became. He chose comfort over conscience. Silence over truth. Sofia tightened her grip on his arm. "Don't let her manipulate you," she hissed. "We deserve that house after everything we've done, everything you've done," I corrected. "Behind my back. In my name. With my money." She opened her mouth to argue again, but I continued, my voice calm, almost soft. "You played a good game. You waited until I trusted you. You used my loneliness as an entry point. You convinced my own son that it was for the best. But you forgot one thing, I may be quiet, but I am not powerless. Sofia's facade cracked. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her eyes. Michael spoke again, weaker this time. Where will we go? I looked at him, and my heart tugged painfully. He was still my son, but now, he was a stranger wearing his face. You'll go, I said gently, where people go when they burn bridges. Somewhere else. Sofia scoffed. You think you've won? I haven't won, I said. I've simply reclaimed what was mine. At that moment, the young couple buying the house stepped out with the agent, papers in hand. It's all signed, the agent announced. Congratulations. I nodded. Thank you. I'll collect the last of my things. I walked past Michael and Sofia toward the door, not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity. Inside, I picked up my small box, a photo, a book, a vase, simple things that held memories, not value. When I stepped out again, I turned to them one last time. This door, I said quietly, closes today. But the lesson stays open forever. I walked away without looking back. This time, not losing anything, but finally getting myself back.